One day in 1971, I worked at Valley Beth Israel in Sun Valley. It was a synagogue of 250 families, nice traditional synagogue. I got a phone call and they say, Rabbi Shulvas and Cantor Fordis wants to talk to you.
So I think I met Yossi first, but we didn't know him as Yossi or even as Joe. We knew him as Mr. Rosen.
Absolutely.
He came into my Hebrew school classroom at Valley Beth Israel, and he's introduced as teaching prayer. And all of a sudden he raises his arms like a conductor that we've never seen before, and he's saying, "Loudy, loudy." And we didn't know, is he speaking English? Is he speaking Hebrew? And that was our introduction to him.
I came Friday afternoon to Rabbi Shulvas' office. No, we talked and everything, and I didn't know how big he was. So he asked me to read, like the little few sentences from the Torah, for this week. I remember, I look at him and I said, I came from Israel. I know Hebrew. I teach already for 2 years. So why you ask me such easy things to do? So he looked at Cantor for this, said, who is this crazy talk to me like this?
When we hired Yossi from Valley Beth Israel in Sun Valley, and he came to work for us, and I was the one who had to relate with him because I had that vice presidency from the temple, and I did a lot of work with him. He was going to be our shamus, but he was also teaching bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs, which is very important, and we did a lot of work together.
So he said, how many students you can take? I said, so far, how long you want, but I don't want 2 weeks before the bar mitzvah, because if they don't hold, I'm not a magician, I'm only a teacher who cares.
He was firm, but very supportive, and go into his small little office with all my papers and a cassette tape back then, and sit down across the desk, and I'd read my paper, and he'd have his hand going like this to the beat, but he always knew me as Chaye Sarah, my bat mitzvah Torah portion. And that was always, the fact that he remembered, he knew my name, but the fact that he always remembered my bat mitzvah Torah portion is special, and I can just only imagine that he was the same way with everybody else.
The first time I walked into Yossi's office, I remember I was walking with you and I was walking behind you because I was so nervous because I had heard stories about his strictness and how he prepared people. But by even 6 months into my tutoring, I felt completely prepared for my bar mitzvah.
Yossi's office at the time was actually in the back of one of the nursery school rooms over in what was still the part of the original motel that was here at VBS. And I would say occasionally when you were in religious school, you would hear some very loud, I don't want to call it yelling, but certainly very animated teaching going on from that office. And I used to say, who is that? And they'd say, oh, that's Mr. Dresner. He's going to teach you for your bar mitzvah.
They said, how many hours can you give us? I said, if you want to hire me and you're going to fire an older man, I don't want the job. Years later, he told me, that's the sentence that it will be good.
I loved Yossi. He was a superb teacher. He had the patience of Job. He was able to b'nai mitzvah all the tune-deaf kids and adults. He was a very special human being.
I remember when I first met Yossi being a member of Cantor Fox's Saturday morning choir. And he was a guy who you definitely respected, but feared a little bit. You were very cautious and didn't want to do anything to upset him and be on the bad side. And I studied with him for my bar mitzvah, and it's been a real treasure to have both of my boys be able to study with him for their bar mitzvahs.
When my youngest daughter, Jessica, was studying with Yossi to become a bat mitzvah, she was really struggling with the amount of work she had, and she negotiated with me to talk to Yossi and see if she could stop at learning 5 of her aliyot. I went into Yossi's office ahead of her before her lesson, kind of gave her, I thought, a really good spiel, and thought I was convincing, and clearly I was not, because Yossi immediately said no. He said, I will decide if she can do all 7. I'm not gonna let her fail, and you have to stop running ahead of her in life, trying to make things easier.
Rabbi Schulweis asked me to take care of the minyan, but I lived in North Hollywood, and to come, to come every day or twice a day, besides I used to teach, it was not easy. But I found out at Valley Bet Shalom, when they like what you do, they keep you all the time here.
Cantor Fortis was the one that started with our bat mitzvah, our b'nai mitzvah class, and I guess Yossi wasn't so satisfied, I guess we were going too fast and not loud enough. So as his famous words, slow and loud, slow and loud. So he would pop in whenever we had class, and he would kind of push Cantor Fortis out of the way and said, okay, group, slow and loud. So that's what we practiced. And then, so when it was your turn, I said, just remember, slow and loud. That's all you have to do.
I remember on Shabbat mornings, junior congregation, where he would be in the small sanctuary at VBI and leading services, and he would always want us to all sing together. And once we did, and when we did it and did it well, he would always look up. And to this most recent, when I saw him last, he looked up as we all sang together in Minyan.
We have 12 people in our family who were taught by Yossi. He was an amazing, amazing teacher. He taught not just the trope and not just Torah, but lessons of life and lessons of Judaism.
He loved sports, as anyone who knew him knows. And he would tell me about what it was like to play soccer and how he would get to school and all these things that were really interesting to me. And he would also talk to me about my great-grandfather Ray, and he would tell me stories about how the temple started.
Well, I remember when we were little and when we first met him, Mom and Dad adopted him, and he became a part of our family. And he would come to our Passover Seders, and he would lead us in song, and he was just a constant in our lives.
Yossi asked me about 10 years ago to have an aliyah at Yom Kippur, and I had to train with him one-on-one, and I now knew what my children felt like, but when I was up there doing the aliyah and reading, he was right by my side the whole time, and it just made everything work out fine.
I was sitting on the bima next to him, and there was a kid pontificating about how he's going to continue being a USY, and he's going to come to VBS and so on and so forth. And Yossi turns to me and he says, "You want to see him again? Take a picture."
He's been a constant in our lives for almost 60 years, and he always was indestructible. He was always here, kind of like the Ner Tamid. He just always was burning intensely, and not to be here, it's a big change, and it'll take a lot of adjustment, and something that will be so difficult, I think, for a long, long time.
People ask me, how long you been and everything? I said, till I do it right. When I feel that I do it right, then the time to live. That's my story, how I started and what I do today. I taught few thousand kids, and when Mr. Goen died, I took the minyan, and I'm still here. Love Valley Bet Shalom. This is my problem and my fault and my weakness. I love Valley Bet Shalom too much.